In the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, I sermonize.
奉主耶稣圣名正道。
May the grace and blessing of our Lord Jesus Christ be with our brethren and our listeners online this evening.
那愿神的恩典慈爱呢，是与今天每一位参加线上聚会的弟兄姐妹，还有亲朋，还有慕道者。
It's the grace of God that we can now enter into the Holy Sabbath.
是神的恩典，让我们能够进入到他的安息。
And it's the grace of God that we can actually cherish the Sabbaths God has given us.
那我们也能够来这边珍惜来守神的安息日。
So may God bless you all.
那愿神来祝福大家。
And today we'd like to continue with the topic of the Sabbaths that God has given.
那今天想要来继续讲到这个神赐的安息日，使人成圣。
And we find that from the scriptures He's given the Holy Sabbaths at least one of the reasons to sanctify.
那我们知道圣经有告诉我们说这个守安息日是神要来使我们成圣。
Firstly, let's turn to the book of Ezekiel.
首先翻开到以西结书
Ezekiel chapter 20.
20章。
Ezekiel chapter 20 verse 12.
以西结书20章的12节。
Moreover, I also gave them my Sabbaths to be a sign between them and me, that they may know that I am the Lord who sanctifies them.
12节，又将我的安息日赐给他们，好在我与他们中间为证据，使他们知道我耶和华是叫他们成为圣的。
And so we see very clearly that God has given his people the Sabbaths.
这边很明显可以看到呢，神将他的安息日赐给他的百姓。
And so when God has given these Sabbaths to his people, that they will grow to know God.
那神赐这个安息日给他的百姓，那他的百姓就会来慢慢的认识神。
And they would also discover that God indeed would sanctify his people.
那他们也能够知道神确实能够来使他们成圣。
And so last time that we studied this, so we identified at least 3 areas.
那上次我们在分享这篇道理的时候，我们有讲到3个部分。
We have to allow our heart to be regulated by the Holy Sabbath that God has given us.
那第一个就是我们要让我们的心把守神赐的安息日成为我们的习惯。
And so that we can gather the blessings on the Holy Sabbath.
那我们能够在安息日的时候来收获神的这个福气。
And then we find that we have to learn how to preserve ourselves sanctified or set apart for this eternal rest.
那我们第二个学习到的是，我们要保守自己，来能够在这个永恒的这个安息里面。
So when we observe the Sabbath, we find our attitude should not change.
那我们在守安息日的时候，我们要知道我们的这个态度是不能改变的。
It should not be different from what God has established.
那不能是来和神所设立的这个安息日有不同的这样子的态度或想法。
And this is so that we do not defile the Holy Sabbath that God has given us.
这样做的话，我们就不来干犯神所赐给我们的安息日了。
And then we also find that we have to enter into this eternal rest.
那我们还发现到说，我们会来进入到这个永恒的安息。
When we enter into his rest with reverence,
那当我们用这个尊敬的心来进入到他的安息里面，
we will learn not to do so or to learn not to come short of God's salvation.
我们就会发觉到我们不会来失去神的这个救恩。
We also find that when we observe these Sabbaths that God has given us,
那我们也会发现到，如果我们来守神的安息日，
we find that yes, God will sanctify us.
我们知道神会来使我们成圣。
And God can sanctify us through his sanctuary.
那神也会从他的这个圣所当中来使我们成圣。
But we find that we need to hallow the Sabbaths.
那首先我们必须要来使这个安息日守为圣日。
It's only when we hallow the Sabbaths of God that we can discover God will sanctify us.
那我们一定要首先把神的日成为圣日呢，神才能够来使我们成圣。
We look at Ezekiel chapter 20.
我翻开到以西结书的20章。
Ezekiel 20 verse 19 and 20.
以西结书20章的19节到20节。
Ezekiel 20 verse 19 and 20.
以西结书20章19节到20节。
I am the Lord your God. Walk in my statutes, keep my judgments and do them. Hallow my Sabbaths, and they will be a sign between me and you, that you may know that I am the Lord your God.
19节，我是耶和华你们的神，你们要顺从我的律例，谨守遵行我的典章，且以我的安息日为圣。这日在我与你们中间为证据，使你们知道我是耶和华你们的神。
And so here we find that God encouraged and urged his people to hallow the Sabbaths of God.
这边神来告诉他的百姓说，我们必须要来守安息日为圣日。
When they hallow the Sabbaths of God, then they will discover a sign being established.
那如果他们守神的安息日为圣的话呢，在神与这个人中间就会有这个证据。
The sanctify means that they, even though they live in the world, they are not of the world.
那我们知道这个成圣呢，就是说，虽然我们生活在这个世上，但是我们是不属于这个世界的。
And so when God sanctifies people, He set them apart for His purpose.
那当神说来使人成圣的时候，是因为他的缘故呢，把我们跟其他人做了出了一个分别。
Now we find that if the people of God continue to obey God and manifest this sign,
那我们发现到，如果神的百姓呢，继续的来守这个安息日，然后来顺从神的这个诫命的话
by manifesting this sign to hallow the Sabbaths, they will also be able to indirectly uphold this standard of God.
那当我们来守这个安息日为圣的时候呢，我们就会看到神与我们中间的这个证据，然后能够来继续的来持守神的这个诫命。
So when they hallow the Sabbath, then they can manifest God's standard.
那当我们来守神的安息日的时候呢，我们就可以来彰显我们与神中间有这个证据。
And so when they manifest this sign, we find that they will be able to recognize within themselves to keep hold of this Sabbath.
那当我们来守安息日的时候，我们就能够彰显出这样的证据，就可以来知道说，我们是要来守这个安息日的。
So within their heart, they will see reason and purpose why to hallow these Sabbaths.
那我们就会知道说，为什么我们必须要来守这个安息日为圣。
Because God has prepared these Sabbaths for His people.
因为我们知道神设立这个安息日是给我们人类的。
And so it's for man to adjust their heart to prepare to enter into these Sabbaths and hallow them.
所以是我们人呢要来遵守，来进入这个安息日，使这个安息日为圣。
So when they hallow these Sabbaths, what can they experience?
那当我们来守这个安息日为圣的话，我们能够得到什么呢？
What is it that God prepared for them?
那神又为他们预备了什么呢？
When God gives these Sabbaths to them, what can they experience?
那神给我们这个安息日，我们能够来体验到什么呢？
What will they definitely discover?
那他们会来察觉到什么呢？
We turn to Ezekiel chapter 37.
我们翻开到以西结书的37章。
Ezekiel chapter 37, verse 26 to 28.
以西结书37章的26到28节。
Ezekiel 37, verse 26 to 28.
以西结书37章26到28节。
Moreover, I will make a covenant of peace with them, and it shall be an everlasting covenant with them. I will establish them and multiply them, and I will set my sanctuary in their midst forever. My tabernacle also shall be with them. Indeed, I will be their God, and they shall be my people. The nations also will know that I, the Lord, sanctify Israel when my sanctuary is in their midst forevermore.
26节，并且我要与他们立平安的约，作为永约。我也要将他们安置在本地，使他们的人数增多，又在他们中间设立我的圣所，直到永远。我的居所必在他们中间，我要做他们的神，他们要做我的子民。我的圣所在以色列人中间，直到永远。外邦人就必知道我是以色列成为圣的耶和华。
And so here we actually see the blessings that God prepares to give His people.
我们这边可以看到神已经预备了这样的福气来赏赐于他的子民。
And so when the people of God prepare their hearts to hallow the Sabbaths,
那神的子民如果预备他们的心来守这个安息日为圣，
by positioning their heart in this way to hallow them,
那如果把这个心来这样子调整到要把安息日守为圣的这个心态，
God will bestow His peace.
那神就会与他们有这个平安的约。
God will establish them when they continue to honor this covenant.
那如果他们持续这样子做的话，神就会来跟他们立约，
And they'll discover how to build this union with God.
然后他们能够来学习怎么样跟神建立这样子同心的这个关系。
God will continue to devote to His people because they devote to hallowing the Sabbaths.
那神会继续的来看顾他的百姓，就像我们也是这样子付出来守神的安息日为圣。
And so when the people of God prepare their hearts to be in the midst of the Lord,
那如果神的子民预备他们的心来到神的中间，
then they'll be able to manifest this identity and to keep this the standard of God.
那他们就可以来彰显他们的身份，甚至来守神的约。
And they'll discover what God gives them
他们也会看到说，神赏赐了给我们什么，
is better than what they had before.
那就是在比他们现在之前有的还要好。
So Sabbath after Sabbath, they'll discover this union with God.
那每一个安息日呢，他们会来发觉到与神的这个同心这个关系。
And Sabbath after Sabbath, God will see your heart towards Him.
那每一个安息日的过一个安息日呢，神会看到我们对他的心是如何。
So when we position our heart in the presence of God,
那如果我们把我们的心来转向神的话，
Sabbath after Sabbath, we build up this fellowship and union with Him.
那么在每一个安息日过后呢，都会来建立跟神的这样子的一个团契。
And then what we'll continue to discover is a more meaningful union with God.
那我们会看到说，与神的团契是这个非常重要的事情，
Because we've seen reason and purpose to hallow the Sabbaths.
因为我们知道说，来把安息日成为圣是有它的意义跟神的旨意在里面。
So when our heart yearns to position ourselves to hallow God on the Holy Sabbath,
那如果我们今天愿意把我们的心来调整到神的里面，
we will discover God will sanctify us.
我们会看到神会来使我们成圣。
He continues to devote to preserve us in this union.
那他会继续的在这样的我们跟他的关系中来持续的付出，
Because God sees we don't want to depart from this union.
因为神看到我们不想要来离开这样子的一个团契，
God sees we don't want to depart from His presence.
那神也看到我们不想来离开他的面，
And God sees we want to remain in the sanctuary.
那神也看到我们很想要待在他的圣所里面。
So when we remain in the sanctuary to hallow the Sabbaths of God,
那如果我们今天在他的圣所里面来守他的安息日，
Sabbath after Sabbath, we find God will continue to build us up in the things that He gives us.
那每一个安息日之后呢，你会发现到说神会来建立我们在每一次安息日所要来建立我们使我们成长的事情。
And gradually we will find that within our heart, the ways of God and the teachings of God become a greater importance in our lives.
那在每一个安息日之后呢，我们会看到神的话语、神的教导对我们来说是非常重要的。
And so when I first came to learn about the True Jewish Church,
那当我刚开始认识到这个真耶稣教会的时候，
the first time I went there, it was a very new experience for me.
那当我刚到第一次到教会的时候呢，是一个非常新的一个体验。
And then after one or two times that I attended the Sabbath, then I decided to stay home.
那我参加了1、2次的安息日聚会后，我就想说，我还是待在家里好了。
Why is this?
那为什么我会这样子想呢？
Because at that time, my heart is more filled with the things that I want to do.
因为当时其实我的心想的是，我其实想要在星期六做的其他的事情。
I want to position my heart in my own pleasures.
那我想要把我的心放在我想要做的事情上
I
面。
want to be satisfied with the things I want to do.
那我想要做我想要做的事情。
So therefore, I find I am disconnected from God on the Holy Sabbath.
那后来我发现我在安息，因为没有去到教会守安息日，我跟神的关系就好像失去连结一样。
And then when I came to learn, remember that now it's Sabbath day.
那我记得当时呢知道说星期六是安息日，
Then I have this struggle within my heart.
那时我的心中确实有一个这样的一个挣扎。
Shall I stay home or shall I go to observe the Holy Sabbath in the Church of God?
我就想说，我要待在家里呢，还是我要去到教会去守安息日呢？
So the battle within the heart is about our ways be God's ways.
那在心中这样的挣扎，其实就是我的想法跟神的这个想法。
Our own pleasures be the pleasures that God can give us.
那第二个就是我自己想要做的事情，跟神要我们去做的事情。
And then gradually, when I began to weigh up more reason and purpose to observe the Holy Sabbath in the True Jewish Church,
那后来我在思考说，在真耶稣教会守安息日的这个重要性到底是什么？我做了一番的思考。
then I found my relationship to connect with God much more meaningful.
那后来我发现到说，我这样子这样的思考之后呢，我发现我跟神的关系是越来越有意义了。
And then when I was in the household of God,
那当我到神的家的时候，
I was able to see how others observe the Holy Sabbath.
那我也可以看到其他人是怎么样来守他的安息日。
And then this helped me also build an understanding about who is this one true God that they all worship, the members all worship.
那这也帮助到我说，原来我所拜的这位独一的真神是谁。
And then from that, then I discover a more greater build.
那从那边我感受到更多的这个建立。
Sabbath after Sabbath, I could grow to learn how to love the commandments of God.
那在每一个安息日呢，我都会学习到 来建立我是怎么样来喜爱这个神的律法。
Of course, many of us know that God loves us first before we love Him.
那当然我们知道神爱我们，我们爱是因为神先爱我们。
So then when we gradually position our heart to love God more,
那如果我们今天把我们的心调整到神，然后知道其实神是很爱我们的，
then Sabbath after Sabbath, there'll be a much greater build that God is establishing in us.
那我们会发现到呢，在每一个安息日之后呢，神已经在我们里面慢慢的建立起来。
With this to do with our steps of salvation, God builds this in us.
那不管是对于神的救恩呢，神也在我们里面慢慢建立了这样子的知识。
Sabbath after Sabbath to learn to be sanctified by the Spirit, Holy Spirit.
那每一个安息日之后呢，我们更可以来学习到神怎么样用他的灵来使我们成圣。
Sabbath after Sabbath to learn how to be deeply rooted in the truth of God.
那甚至在每一个安息日之后，我们更学习到怎么样更深深的扎根在神的道理上。
And then as we go through another stage in our life cycle,
那当我们到了不同阶段的人生当中的时候，
then I think about my studies.
那我就可能想到我的学业。
Then I think about marriage in the Lord.
那我想到说我要在主内联婚。
And all this is still being provided.
那这些事情神都已经为我们来预备好了。
Because I want to grow to hallow the Sabbath.
因为我想要来更守这个安息日成为圣。
So we find that Sabbath after Sabbath, God is still giving.
那你会发现到说，其实每一个安息日呢，神都一直在赏赐福气给我们，
And we are still receiving.
而且我们是一直在持续的来收获这样子的神的福气。
So even when it came to marriage within the Lord,
那甚至讲到可能我们讲到说要在主内来联婚，
just as we know there is the marriage concern committee,
比如说我们知道教会有这个婚姻介绍的人员，
and they care about the marriage union of our brethren.
那他能够来关心就是未婚的弟兄姐妹，
So they can discover a channel of blessing to be married within the Lord.
那他们就是以这样的管道可以帮助弟兄姐妹来鼓励大家在主内联婚的这样的事情。
So for all these things that are shared, there's one thing that's very common.
那这个很多事情我们大家都共同的参与，但是有一件事情是我们是相同来守的来做的。
When we continue to remain in the household of God, God will continue to bless Sabbath after Sabbath after Sabbath.
就是当我们只要都还在教会里面，那经过每一个安息日的时候呢，神都是一直在祝福我们，给我们福气的。
Because we have seen reason in our heart to hallow God in the household of God.
因为我们知道我们为什么要到神的教会里面来守他的安息日为圣。
We find we struggle less about whether we wish to be in the household of God.
因为我们的心中就没有来挣扎说为什么我要到神的教会去守安息日。
Because by then, what is the most important matter to be rooted in is the word of God and the ways of God.
因为我们知道最重要的事情就是神的话到底有没有在我们的心里面扎根。
This is our struggle.
这个就是我们会遇到的一些挣扎。
So how can we continue to hallow God on the Holy Sabbath after Sabbath?
那我们要怎么样一直在每一次的安息日当中呢，来使守神的安息日为圣呢？
We turn to Isaiah 58.
我们翻开到以赛亚书的58章。
Isaiah 58.
以赛亚书58章
Isaiah 58, verse 13.
13节。
Isaiah 58, verse 13.
以赛亚书58章的13节。
If you turn away your foot from the Sabbath, from doing your own pleasure on my holy day, and call the Sabbath a delight, the holy day of the Lord, honorable, and shall honor him, not doing your own ways, nor finding your own pleasures, nor speaking your own words.
13节，你若在安息日调转你的脚步，在我圣日不以操作为喜乐，称安息日为可喜乐的，称耶和华的圣日为可尊重的，而且尊重这日，不办自己的私事，不随自己的私意，不说自己的私话。
And so this is the word of the Lord.
这个是神的话语。
It talks about doing your own ways. It talks about finding your own pleasures.
那这边讲到说，我们来办自己的事，自己的想自己的意思。
It talks about speaking your own words.
甚至讲到我们讲自己的私话。
If we're able to overcome these things,
如果我们能够来调整、来战胜这些的事情呢？
and God remains that priority for us,
那把神当作我们首先首位最重要的事情，
then we'll find that God will build us Sabbath after Sabbath.
你会发现到神会来建立我们的灵性，在每一个安息日之后，
Because God will then see that we're in his presence.
因为神看到我们在神的这个当中，
And God sees we give due attention to His ways and His pleasures.
那他也看到我们把我们的心思意念放在神的事情上面。
So this is what we have to learn to do.
这个就是我们必须要来学习的事情。
That Sabbath after Sabbath, we can actually discover this build where, providing we don't forsake this interference for this sanctification of God.
那每一个安息日，我们就必须要来学习说，不要有任何的干涉使我们能够来去守神的这个，不去到神的教会里面守安息日。
And so when we master this,
那如果我们来好好的掌握这一点，
then God can see that we hallow His Sabbaths.
那神就可以知道我们是想要守他的生日为圣的。
God will see that we love His Sabbaths.
那神会看到我们是很喜爱他的生日安息日的。
And God can see that we love Him building us up Sabbath after Sabbath after Sabbath.
那神也知道神也可以看到我们是很喜爱神来在每一个安息日之后来建立我们的灵性，
All the way to our ultimate blessing of salvation.
那一直到我们最终的这个永恒的这些这个福气当中。
So let us allow things not to interfere with how God sanctifies us.
那我们就要学习不要让其他的事情来干涉我们能够使神能够让我们成为圣的这个事情上面。
Another matter that we can learn about the Holy Sabbath.
那另外一件事情，我们可以在守安息日上面可以学到的，
Nations or Gentiles will come to know the true church through God sanctifying His people according to truth.
就是讲到说，这个外邦会认识神的真教会，是藉由神用真理使他的子民成圣。
This is also God's plan and intention.
我们知道这个也是神的计划之一。
Yes, His people know how to honor the Sabbath.
当然，他知道子民们都知道如何来守这个神的安息日。
But even though the people of God have this relationship and union with one true God,
那当然，我们跟神有这样子的这个关系，有这样子的一个团契。
God also has concern for those who don't know the one true God.
那当然，神对这些还未认识他的人呢，有这样子的一个顾虑。
So when they know the one true God through us who keep the commandment of God and keep the Holy Sabbath,
那如果这些外邦人来认识神，是因为我们持守神的诫命的这些人，
they can also discover what God gives them just as He's given us.
那他们可以发现到说，神怎么样来赐福去给他们，就像神赐福给我们这些人。
This is also the plan of God.
这个也是神的计划之一。
So that more people can be saved and delivered by God.
那就有更多人能够被神来拯救，
Because God is also concerned about their salvation.
因为神当然也是很顾虑到他们的这个救赎和救恩。
Now let's turn back to Ezekiel chapter 37.
我们翻回到以西结书的37章
Ezekiel chapter 37, verse 28.
28节。
Ezekiel 37, verse 28.
以西结书37章的28节。
The nations also will know that I, the Lord, sanctify Israel when my sanctuary is in their midst forevermore.
28节，我的圣所在以色列人中间直到永远，外邦人就必知道我是叫以色列成为圣的耶和华。
And so we can find here that when we hallow the Holy Sabbaths,
这边可以看到，如果我们来使安息日成圣，
when we uphold this standard of God and the commandment of God,
如果我们来持守神的标准，还有神的这个诫命，
this can be a sign for those who don't know God.
这个就可以让这些外邦人来看到的这样的一个我们所做的这样的行为。
So for these nations or Gentiles who don't know God, they can also discover how God can also sanctify them.
这边就讲到说，这些外邦人不认识的神呢，就会知道神呢是神是成为圣的。
It's as though that we are meant to be a light for others to know the one true God and know how to enter into the Sabbath.
这边是说到神是怎么样叫以色列成为圣的那个神。那我们也知道说，我们要在外邦人里面当中来成为光。
So there will be some Gentiles or people who don't know God that are willing to join up to the one true God.
有许多外邦人，他们不认识神，就因为藉由我们这个光，就能够愿意来认识这位神。
This is something God is willing to do.
这个是神愿意来做的事情。
And this can also happen through the True Jesus Church.
那这个也可以借由我们真耶稣教会来发生。
So what is it that God planned to do?
那神的计划 还有什么呢？
Especially for those who don't know the one true God.
尤其是那些还未认识这个独一真神的人。
Let's turn to Isaiah 56.
我们翻开到以赛亚书的56章。
Isaiah 56.
以赛亚书56章。
Isaiah 56, verse 6 and 7.
6节到7节。
Isaiah 56, verse 6 and 7.
以赛亚书56章的6节到7节。
Also the sons of the foreigner who join themselves to the Lord to serve him and to love the name of the Lord to be his servants. Everyone who keeps from defiling the Sabbath and holds fast my covenant. Even them I will bring to my holy mountain and make them joyful in my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and their sacrifices will be accepted on my altar, for my house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations.
6节，还有那些与耶和华联合的外邦人，要侍奉他，要爱耶和华的名，要做他的仆人，就是凡守安息日不干犯，又持守他约的人。他必领他们到我的圣山，使他们在祷告我的殿中喜乐。他们的燔祭和平安祭在我坛上必蒙悦纳，因我的殿必称为万民祷告的殿。
And so here we actually see a God-centered blessing.
这边可以看到以神为中心的这个福气。
Providing that God's people does not defile the Sabbath.
那这些人如果不干犯神的安息日，
Provided they don't not ruin the blessing that God gives to his people, Sabbath after Sabbath after Sabbath.
那如果他们不守安息日，然后不被神来祝福，
then we find that for the foreign nations or for the Gentiles who don't know God,
那我们可以看到这些外邦人呢，
if they're willing to join this one true God,
如果他们愿意来与这个真神来联合，
and they're willing to join the true Jesus church,
愿意来参与这个真耶稣教会，
they will discover what God gives them at his holy mountain.
那他们会发现到神在他的圣山会来做出怎么样的一个赏赐。
God's holy mountain, God's altar,
那神的圣山神的坛，
God's house,
神的殿，
they will discover what God gives.
他们会来发觉到神的赏赐。
And so when they continue to join themselves to the Lord,
那如果他们继续的来与神联合，
then they will definitely discover God's blessing.
他们确实会来看到神的这个赏赐，
Their eyesight is turned to the one true God,
因为他们的眼目转向了这位独一神，
and they wish to keep the holy Sabbath.
那他们也愿意来守安息日。
Now, for the people, for the foreign nations or for the Gentiles to willing to join to the one true God in this way,
那如果这些外邦人愿意来这样子与神联合，
then it will also bear testimony that we have to be a good example to them.
那另外一个方面来说，就是说我们也要作为这个外邦人的一个榜样。
Yes, God will manifest His work,
当然，神一定会彰显他的工作。
but we have to be like a light of how to hallow the Sabbath for nations to also willing to join up to this one true God.
那我们就必须成为这个光，让这些外邦人看到我们也是一直来持守神的安息日的这个榜样，
To be more and more willing to join up to this mountain of God.
然后让他们能够愿意的更多的来加入到神的圣山。
You know, when we think about Apostle Paul and Barnabas,
那当我们说想到这个保罗与巴拿巴，
you know, they said they had to be a light to the Gentiles.
我们知道他们有说要作为这个世上的光。
They had to be. They were. God had appointed them and set them for this purpose.
那他们要神立他们作为这个外邦人的光。
And then when the people who don't know the God, the Gentiles, when they heard the message of God, then we find they began to glorify God.
那当这些外邦人还不认识神，然后听到了神的福音之后呢，他们就可以来荣耀神。
Now, why is it then for the people of God during the time of Ezekiel,
那为什么当时在以西结那个时代的以色列人，
we find that there is a problem for them to do this?
为什么在那个时候的人呢，他们对于守安息日有那么大的问题呢？
There's a problem in that they did not continue to hallow the holy Sabbaths.
那他们为什么不能继续把这个安息日守为圣日呢？
Why could they not hallow the holy Sabbaths?
他们为什么不能来这样子做？
Why could they not cause God to be pleased with what they do on the holy Sabbath?
那为什么他们不能在守安息日这个事上蒙神喜悦呢？
Because when it came to the holy Sabbath, their eyesights were on different things.
因为在安息日的这个时间里面，这些当时的人呢，他们的眼目并不是在神的身上，
This became their problem.
这个就变成了他们的问题，
This became their difficulty.
这个就变成他们的困难，
This is why the Sabbath became defiled.
这个就是为什么他们就干犯了神的安息日。
We turn back to Ezekiel chapter 20.
如果我们翻回到以西结书的20章，
Ezekiel chapter 20, verse 8.
20章的第8节，
Ezekiel chapter 20, verse 8.
以西结书20章第8节。
But they rebelled against me and would not obey me. They did not all cast away the abominations which were before their eyes, nor did they forsake the idols of Egypt. Then I said, I will pour out my fury on them and fulfill my anger against them in the midst of the land of Egypt.
8节，他们却背逆我，不肯听从我，不抛弃他们所喜爱那可憎之物，不离弃埃及的偶像。我就说，我要将我的愤怒倾在他们身上，在埃及地向他们成就我怒中所定的。
We find that when the children of Israel were departing the land of Egypt,
我们发现到，当以色列人离开了埃及地的时候，
God had set them aside and set them apart that they would serve the one true God.
那神就把他们做了一个分别，他们必须要来敬拜这个独一神。
God had already was preparing the Sabbaths for them to honor and keep.
那甚至来是讲了这个安息日是他们要来守的。
But as they continued to go in the direction that God led them in,
那当他们一直在往这个一个方向走的时候，
we see the problem that they had.
我们发现到他们所遇到的这个问题。
The problem, the issue is not with God, but it's with the people.
那这个问题并不是在神的身上，反而是在人的身上。
In verse 8, we see it talks about the abominations which were before their eyes.
第8节看到说，这边有说呢，在他们眼前所喜爱那些的可憎之物。
So God was willing to establish His covenant with His people.
那当然，神想要来呈现来应许，这是他所设立的这个福气。
God established the tabernacle.
那神甚至设立了这个会幕。
God was preparing to sanctify them.
那神也预备要来使他的百姓成圣。
God is willing for them and yearning for them to be stronger to join in this union with God.
那神也很渴慕这些以色列人能够赶快的来加入到他的里面。
But we find there's a different eyesight that they have.
但是在这边我们可以看到，百姓的眼中有不同的东西，就是这些可憎之物。
So their eyesight was upon idols.
因为他们的眼睛都看在这些偶像。
So when their eyesight is upon idols,
那如果他们的眼睛看向这些偶像的话，
we find they become unclean within their heart.
然后就会发现到他们的内心就变得不干净了。
Then we find that they struggle to see the goodness that God is willing to give them Sabbath after Sabbath.
就是因为有这样不干净、不洁净的心呢，他们就不能在每一个安息日当中看到神所要赐给他们的福气。
And so it's like they lost that pure identity that God was preparing for them and set them in.
那他们就表示说，他们就是失去了神为他们预备好了这样子的一个身份，这样子清洁、这个圣洁的这个身份就这样失去了。
And so what does this actually tell us today?
那今天这个事情告诉了我们什么呢？
Today we realize we have to preach the gospel of God.
那今天我们知道我们要来传神的福音，
We find we have to preserve ourselves in God's salvation.
我们也知道我们要保守自己在神的救恩里面。
We find for those who don't know God, God desires to save them.
那我们也知道那些还未信主的人，神也愿意的要来拯救他们。
God desires to save His people through His church, the body of Christ.
那神也要用他的教会，藉由他的教会来救赎这些尚未认识神的人。
And for us who have received this gospel of God,
那今天我们领受了神的福音，
we also are to be like this light for those who don't know the one true God.
那我们必须也要成为这样子的光，让这些还未认识神的人呢来认识神。
We are to continue to be this light for those to know the gospel of God through His church.
那我们也必须成为这个光，让这些尚未认识神的人借由神的教会来认识神。
And if we are effective,
那如果我们做得很有功效，
if we are fulfilling this commission,
如果我们来完成这样的一个使命，
then our eyesight is truly upon the Lord.
那就表示我们的眼目是真的是在神的身上
And
的。
then we'll find that we're not unclean.
我们会发现到我们自己是洁净的，
We find that we will be effective for God's purpose.
我们会发现到我们是因为我们会被神的事情所影响。
But when we look away,
当我们如果把这个专注离开了神的身上，
then we find that maybe sometimes when we're trying to share the gospel of God with others,
那我会发现到说，有时我们可能想要跟别人来分享神的福音的时候，
maybe we have a difficulty to help others to see the truth of the gospel.
那我们可能会没有办法来帮助到未信主的人来看到神福音里面的这个讯息，
But maybe God is less willing to work with us.
或者是我们发现到搞不好是神他不那么愿意的与我们来同工了。
Maybe because we haven't removed the impurities within our heart.
那可能就是因为我们还不愿意把自己心中的这些不洁净的东西来处理掉，
And our eyesight is not truly focused on the things of God.
甚至我们的眼目并没有完全的在神的身上。
But when we acknowledge our faults before the Lord,
但是如果我们知道了自己的这些问题的时候呢，
then we'll find that these are idolatries or things or abominations within our heart.
就是这些可能偶像或者这些不洁净的东西在我们心里的话，
They can be removed if we repent and acknowledge our faults.
那我们就必须要来悔改，然后来向神承认我们的错误。
Then we might be able to discover a turning point.
那这样子做的话，才能够有机会再看到这样的转捩点。
Then God can make use of us for His purpose.
那神就可以再次的使我们成为他的器皿。
So we can also steer others to this gospel of God.
那我们就可以同样的来激励彼此，来继续的为神的缘故来努力。
Because then this also a means for God to restore our eyesight.
因为这就是神要帮助我们把我们的眼目转向到他的身上。
So then when we see how God preserves us and sanctifies us,
那如果我们看到神是这样子来帮助我们修补我们，甚至是来保护我们，
and so then when we see God clearly as we should,
那我们就可以清楚的看到了神。
then we can be a good example for those who don't know God,
那我们就可以成为那些还没有信主之人的这个榜样，
to help steer them to this salvation through the true church, the body of Christ.
那能够来激励他们一起来到这个神的教会，就是真耶稣教会。
So we find that if we are an example, if we are this light, just like Paul and Barnabas were lights to those who don't know God,
那如果我们今天就像保罗与巴拿巴一样，是这些外邦人的光，
then they will be able to discover salvation through the body of Christ.
那其他人就可以借由神的这个身体来认识了这个耶稣基督，
Because their eyesight is always on the Lord.
因为我们的眼目一直是在神的身上，
It's always on the commission.
是一直在这个神交代我们的这个使命之
It's
上，
always on God's purpose.
那一直在神的这个旨意当中。
So how can we cause other nations, or can we cause Gentiles to discover salvation through the church?
那我们今天要如何使外邦人来察觉到或是来认识这位天上的神呢？
How can we continue to remain preserved, sanctified in the Lord?
那我们要怎么样把自己保持在神使我们成圣的这个状态当中呢？
And how can we remain this instrument for God's purpose, so that others can also know the one true God?
那我们要怎么样人是这样子是神的器皿，让别人借由我们来认识到神呢？
So they know the truth of salvation through the body of Christ.
那知道神神是是我们这个救恩的神。
We turn to the Gospel of John,
我们翻开到约翰福音
John chapter 17.
17章。
John chapter 17, verse 19.
约翰福音17章的19节。
John chapter 17, verse 19.
约翰福音17章19节。
And for their sakes I sanctify myself, that they also may be sanctified by the truth.
19节，我为他们的缘故，自己分别为圣，叫他们也因真理成圣。
And we find that in this prayer of Jesus, he set a principle.
那在神的这个祷告里面呢，他来做了一个这个原则，
That for the sake of the disciples who truly follow the Lord, he sanctified himself.
就是他为了这些他自己的门徒呢，耶稣自己本身先分别为圣。
And so when they are sanctified by the truth, then we find that they can be preserved for God's purpose.
那也是这样的原因，叫他的门徒能够因为真理来成圣。
So when we preserve ourselves in this truth,
那我今天如果在真理里面来保守自己，
we find that God can make use of us effectively for his purpose.
我们就可以发现到说，神可以 使我们成为他的器皿来使用我们。
So unless our eyesight is upon the Lord Jesus Christ and the truth,
那如果我们的眼目眼目只在神的这个身上，他的福音当中，
let's say the truth of his salvation,
还有在他的这个真理的这个救恩里面，
then we find that we will still remain defiled. And that's contrary to God's work of salvation.
那如果我们没有这样子的眼目在神的身上的话，会发现到我们所想的是与神的这个救恩和道理是相反的。
So may our eyesight continue to be upon the Lord Jesus Christ and in his truth.
所以我们应该要把我们的眼目时常的都放在神的这个神的上面。
So when we're sanctified by his truth, then we can be effective vessels for his purpose.
那如果我们今天使神来使我们成圣了之后呢，我们就才能够成为这个有用的这个器皿。
We can be instruments to help others turn to this one true God and the church of salvation.
那我们可以因为成为这样的器皿，能够使别人来认识神，加入到神的真教会。
So today we've learned about two specific areas.
那今天我们学习到2点。
One is about God sanctifying us, providing that we hallow his Sabbaths.
那第一个是讲到说，如果我们要神会使我们成圣啊，我们要守安息日，然后神会使我们成圣。
So not forsake that we do not forsake not forsake interference for salvation of God, sanctification of God.
那不要来失去了或是不要了这个神要来使我们成圣的这个机会。
And then we also find that the nations or Gentiles will come to know the one true God and true church.
那我们也会学习到这个外邦呢，就会因为这样也来认识了这位独一神，甚至来守安息日。
Through the sanctification of God's people.
那藉由这个神来使他的子民来成圣。
When their eyesight continue to remain on the Lord.
而且这些子民的眼目要一直在神的身上。
So what does this actually tell us, Sabbath after Sabbath?
那这个安息日，每个安息日之后呢，这些事情告诉了我们什么？
We firstly look at Acts chapter 26.
那我们来看到使徒行传的26章。
Acts 26 verse 18.
26章的18节。
Acts 26 verse 18.
使徒行传26章的18节。
To open their eyes in order to turn them from darkness to light and from the power of Satan to God, that they may receive forgiveness of sin and an inheritance among those who are sanctified by faith in me.
18节，我差你到他们那里去，要叫他们的眼睛得开，从黑暗中归向光明，从撒旦权下归向神，又因信我得蒙赦罪，和一切成圣的人同得基业。
And so here we can see that the people can indeed be locked in darkness.
这边可以看到呢，人能够被锁在这个黑暗当中。
They seek to be pardoned.
那他们想要得到来赦罪。
But when they experience this turning point by God,
那今天因为神的关系呢，
providing that they turn to him and don't reject him.
那因为神的关系，那又加上他们转向了神，然后不来离弃这个神，
then God will continue to sanctify them.
那神也会使他们来成圣的。
So on our part, we should not suppress this sanctifying work of God.
那在我们自己的话呢，我们不要来压抑神要来使我们成圣的这件事情。
When we remain kept by the power of God,
我们应该要常常使神的力量藏在我们里面。
we can be effective vessels because our eyesight is upon the Lord Jesus Christ.
那使我们成为这个有用的器皿，因为我们的眼目是在神的身上的。
We've positioned our firmly upon the truth of God.
因为我们把我们的心确实的转向在神的这个方向，
And we're sanctified by his power.
而且我们是因为神的力量成为圣，
Sanctified in the truth of God.
而且是在神的真理里面成圣的。
The second thing that we can learn Sabbath after Sabbath.
那在第二点我们可以学习到的是，
We turn to Hebrews chapter 2.
我翻开到希伯来书2章
Hebrews chapter 2 verse 11.
2章的11节。
Hebrews chapter 2 verse 11.
希伯来书2章的11节。
For both he who sanctifies and those who are being sanctified are all one, for which reason he is not ashamed to call them brethren.
11节，因那使人成圣的和那些得以成圣的，都是出于一，所以他称他们为弟兄，也不以为耻。
And so here he talks about the Lord not being ashamed to refer to us as brethren.
那这边讲到说，神称为我们弟兄也不以为耻。
And so if we have this fellowship with God,
那如果我们今天与神有这样的团契，
and we are hallowing the truth of the Sabbath,
那我们把安息日守为圣日。
each time, Sabbath after Sabbath, He's not ashamed of us.
那每一次的这个安息日呢，我们知道神也神不以我们为耻，
Because we are not ashamed to learn how to observe the Holy Sabbath properly.
因为我们也没有来因为确实的守安息日以为耻。
So as we continue to keep the Holy Sabbath properly,
那我们必须要来继续的好好的确实的守安息日。
Sabbath after Sabbath, God won't be ashamed of us.
那在每一个安息日之后呢，神都不会来以我们为耻，
Because we've reasoned out not to be ashamed of Him.
因为我们已经知道我们这样子做是因为也不以为以神为耻。
So let us continue to strengthen ourselves in the Sabbaths that God has given.
那愿我们大家继续在神给我们的安息日当中，能够继续的得力量，
So that we will continue to be preserved for the ultimate blessing, the salvation of our souls.
那我们能够继续的来得着这个福气，一直到最终的这个奖赏。
And let us not depart the mountain of God,
那我们也不要来离开神的这个山，
because God will fulfill His blessing here.
因为神会来完成他所说的这个赏赐，
He will fulfill the ultimate blessing in the True Jesus Church.
因为他会在神这个真耶稣教会里面来完成他所说的应许。
May God guide us.
愿神来带领我们大家。
Amen.
阿们。
Let's sing a concluding hymn.
好，我们来唱最后一首的赞美诗。
Hymn number 162.
赞美诗162首。
Hymn 162.
赞美诗162首。
Please rise.
请站立。